What I love about community is that, there's all of these components. There are the people who have already participated in service. There's Jane, who does everything. I think I'm going to change your name to Jane Everything Mormon. It beats crazy Jane. What we don't stop and think about necessarily, those of us who are sitting in the chairs listening, is our contribution. The difference that we make by being here, by being present. We tend to think that we're just receiving, right? That we're just listening, we're just taking it in, and if we get something out of it, that's good. Right? Right? Oh, good. And we don't realize the contribution that we are making by our presence, by our attention, by our energetic connection with each other. And what I want to begin today by honoring is the synergy that is happening in this room, and how that synergy creates something more than this service could have ever been without every single one of us being here. So I thank you for that. Now, what in the world am I talking about when I say we must look beyond the numbers? I love giving you titles where you're going, what is she talking about this time? Anybody know what that refers to? Great. It does refer to looking beyond appearances, and I'm going to expand on that. Jean's sharing. Where did she go? Oh, there you are. Because she spoke about what she was looking for being right in front of her. So we're going to expand on that, and thank you for everybody just feeding perfectly right into what it is that we'll explore together today. How many people in the room happen to see the film Hidden Figures? If you haven't, please put it at the top of your list, because it is many stories. It is, at its heart, it is the story of 3 African American brilliant mathematicians who are at the very start of the space program in this country, and they are part of a larger group of women who are their own division and hidden clear across campus from anybody else because of their what? Color. And they're referred to as computers because, of course, what didn't exist yet? Computers. So these 3 women in particular, and this is a true story, and they all go on to contribute to the space program for many years in very significant ways. That's just part of the story. That's just part of the story. What my talk title refers to today is one particular scene that is easily overlooked. So in the flight research division, there is this group of mathematicians who are particularly skilled in terms of calculating trajectories. And One of the three women, Catherine Goebel, is called to be part of this group, much to the chagrin of everybody else, who happen to be all, guess what? And guess what else? Men. Right. So not only is she African American, she is female. And so she is still working after hours, and there is a blackboard that goes up at least another story's worth in this room, and she's on a tall ladder that leans against that blackboard, and she is staring at these calculations that she has written on the blackboard. And Mr. Harrison, who is the director of this division, comes out of his office, and he's preparing to leave. Everybody else is gone. The room is actually pretty dark, and so she's sharing with him her concerns about what the calculations indicate about the success, the potential success or not of the mission. And he says to her, then we must look beyond the numbers. And he leaves. And she stands there, and she is looking again and looking again, sort of like you did in your refrigerator, sort of like we do in our lives when we're looking for answers, looking again to see, what did I miss? What isn't right in the calculations? And her discovery actually changes the course of history. But I'm not going to tell you that part. What's interesting is that when we are trying to figure stuff out, when we are looking at circumstances, conditions, effects in our lives, or trying to find something in the refrigerator, it really doesn't matter, it's all the same. We are looking with the eyes and through the eyes of our previous experience. That's just what our brain does, right? It's looking from the frame of reference of the experience that has gone before this moment. And it's trying to help us figure it out. Logically, rationally, based on this evidence, based on this experience, based on all of that. It doesn't bring anything new into the equation because it doesn't know how to do that very well. And even when we say, well, okay, if I could imagine in a bigger way, if I could play in what-if land, then what might I imagine? Then what might I see? Then what might I understand? Then what choice might appear before me that doesn't seem to be before me right now? Still, there is a limit. Not a real one, mind you, but the feeling of a limitation because our frame of reference is limited to what we have experienced. It just is. Unless we know the tools of the trade. And we know how to really play in what-if land, and how to really invite spirit into the process, how to go within, how to trust ourselves enough to not argue with those insights, with those intuitions, and how to even just in baby steps, just gingerly step over that threshold. Do you realize, this occurred to me this week. I'm so excited to share it with you. So, as we've talked about many times before, we're constantly making choices, right? I mean, even without realizing it. You're all sitting there making choices right now. Even without realizing it, we're constantly making choices. As we bring awareness to our choices, then what happens is that we can notice, because what that does, and I know we're all very busy, and we all feel like we have to do everything in a hurry, or at least some of us do. I've heard that. Even though this slows everything down, it doesn't slow anything down. What it really does is it makes everything more efficient. To attend, to invest our attention in our choices in such a way that we recognize that we have these choices, and by the way, every choice leads to another. Very good. And with every decision, with every choice, we cross a threshold. There is the moment before the choice, or the second, or the instant before the choice is made, and then we cross that threshold and we step into a new reality. Really, we step into a new reality that is informed by the choice we just made. And then more choices open up that are connected to that threshold crossing. Can you all see that with me? So when Catherine was standing on the ladder and Mr. Harrison said that we must look beyond the numbers, I mean, this is a brilliant woman. This is a woman who has very carefully done all of these calculations, who knows why they say what they say, who knows where those calculations are leading. Look beyond the numbers. But she took the instruction. She took it in as an invitation to see, to perceive differently. To invite her perceptions to open. Because as our perceptions open, which is what happens when we, more often than not, make conscious choices, make aware choices, what happens as our perceptions open is that vistas upon vistas upon vistas upon vistas also appear. And it isn't that we're creating a new world. It's that we're seeing a world, we're perceiving a world, we're feeling a new world, we're living a new world that we could not perceive before from where we were looking. Which is how Catherine got to the calculations she needed to find. And I'm still not going to tell you the rest. Our willingness to look beyond the numbers, beyond the evidence, beyond everybody breathe now, the news, the internet, even common sense. Now, I don't know if that phrase is used anymore, but when I was growing up, my mother would say all the time, anybody else? Use your sense. What in the world does that mean? In my mother's case, that meant do things the way she thought I should. And I'm sure that didn't happen for anybody else. So, the other thing that happens when we are able to expand our awareness and invite our sensitivities, our spidey sense to be alive and aware, and invite a greater idea, a higher idea, the divine idea that isn't out there somewhere. It's right here. It's right here. But if all we're doing is watching what's in front of us and watching what the world is showing us as a result of us watching what's in front of us, because those two things circulate just perfectly, then the other possibilities that are right here, right now, in front of my very eyes, we can't see them. We can't see them. And what about considering the impossible? What about making room for what seems to be what our brain, what the world, what the internet, what our parents, whether they're still alive or not, because sometimes I still hear about common sense, even though my mother's been gone for almost 20 years. What about making room for the miraculous? How do we do that? Well, not by supplicating, not by bargaining. Anybody grow up with a faith tradition where we pleaded and promised and swore and said, I'll never do it again, I'll never ask anything again, I'm the only one? Oh. So I love this quote, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, from Alice in Wonderland. There's no use trying, Alice says. One can't believe impossible things. I dare say, said the Queen. You haven't had much practice. When I was your age, I always did it for a half hour a day. Why sometimes? I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Why not make room for the impossible? We want the miraculous whatever, right? In our dreams, in our prayers, in our affirmations, the new life experience that we are making ourselves a place of welcome for. Why not include the miraculous? And what is the miraculous? It's what seems impossible. Right? It's what seems impossible. It's what seems beyond the realm of common sense. In the science of mind we teach, everything that occurs in our lives is simply the outpicturing of our consciousness, operating through the law of mind. Therefore, those events that seem to be miraculous in nature are actually the law acting at a level beyond our awareness. As we evolve our consciousness, what previously seemed miraculous becomes a natural, normal, and understandable way of life. I dare say, every single one of us, we all have had something come into our lives, whether it was an understanding, a realization, an answer, a solution, a resolution, a dissolution, that came, what's this for? Out of the blue. Where is the blue anyway? that came out of the blue. And once that happened, did we question it and say, oh, well, no, wait a minute. You're out of the blue. So I'm not going to trust you. I'm not going to accept you. I'm not going to allow this blessing in my life. You're out of the blue. And I can't explain you. How many of us do that? Nobody. It happens. We tell our friends this really cool thing happened out of the blue, and then we carry on. We just accept it. We may be astonished, we may be surprised, we may be delighted, we may be relieved. Whatever the case may be, we accept it, and then we carry on, right? We don't send it back. So that then becomes an experience that makes sense to us because we experienced it. That's what I was talking about in the very beginning. Is our frame of reference is what makes sense to us because we've experienced it. As we make room for the miraculous, as we make room for the impossible, I don't care which word you use, as we make room for out of the blueness, then our experience of the impossible or the miraculous becomes ordinary because of our availability to it. You with me so far? In Walden, Henry David Thoreau wrote, in the conclusion actually, I learned this at least by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. Most of us have read the quote up till there. But what follows is really exquisite. He will put some things behind, will pass an invisible boundary. New, remember the threshold? New, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him. Or the old laws will be expanded and interpreted in his favor in a more liberal sense. And he will live with the license of a higher order of being. It is this higher order that Ernest Holmes addresses when he wrote, "There is such a thing as hidden splendor. And all of it is here in us, waiting to come alive." Thank you.